Morning, everyone.
Like that.
I will call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order. On this date, Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, we begin our meeting with the pledge. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? I'll hear a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. At this time, we have a little bit of time for public comment. And if you have some comments, you can please come up to the front by the microphone, sign in, and I will give you 5 minutes for your comments. Anyone in the audience wishing to do that? Please come forward.
Good morning.
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 I wish to address Sawtooth Bluffs and where that's going. There are some questions that I would like to hear some answers for that I think might help everyone get a picture about where this might be going. My first question is, who is this planning for? Who is Sawtooth Bluffs for? At one point, Commissioner Mills, thank you, said that this is for the user groups that live and work here. I'm wondering, is that still true, or have we been replaced by tourists? Who do you commissioners represent? The people who live, work, and elected you, or the tourism industry? What or who is your biggest asset in this industry of tourists? Is it the money they drop, or the people who serve them, providing what they can to make their encounter in Cook County as you advertise? All the great things you promise cannot happen without people to operate them. And right now, I don't know of anyone who's doing a bang-up job of keeping the working people here. Consider your own difficulties. Look at your county employees. How many resignations and rehires do you have every month? You celebrate 1, 2, and 3 years of employment like that's a real milestone. That's just getting their feet wet. There's no guarantee they're going to be here. Our businesses struggle to have regular hours, many of them shorthanded. Is this a healthy picture of employment for this community? Even the smallest development is going to require people. What efforts are you making to solve that issue? A local workforce is our future. If you do no more than advertise and promote what we have today, the county will continue to attract people, always has. That is the natural beauty that exists. Here is the natural beauty that exists that few places have. Aren't we lucky? We do not need to be a Disneyland that is constantly adding new attractions to get you to come back. Those who come for what is. In 1 year, we went from 1.2 million to 1.3 million tourists. How many more do you need? Will there ever be enough? Let's take a look at the RFP, the request for proposal. The direction given is all toward a regional designation. In other words, tourists. On September 23rd, a report was given to the board from Mitch of Parks and Trails, and it says, to adopt a plan that reflects the community vision and qualifies the property for legacy funding from the state. Well, isn't Minnesota proud of what it's doing right now with $1 billion worth of theft? There are several questions that have not, oops. It also says that Parks and Trails has prioritized this project because of the $30,000 that the commissioners put into the budget. So now you have another choice, commissioners. You can reprioritize this project and put it into the future, giving some consideration as to what is truly wanted in the best interests of the public that you represent. How are you going to get the feedback that you want from a broad range of people? Well, one tool would be that survey that I thought I saw in the agenda for today. Let's go back to the language in the RFP. There is something called scope of work. Now, this is what you're telling these people that you want them to bid or give you information on. And the words that you use, like in item D says, determine the community's interest in camping facilities, operating a higher volume campground versus a handful of dispersed walk-in campsites. Guess where your priority is there. Item E says, determine amenities, programs, facilities that would benefit residents and visitors equally. I think the people who live and work here should have a priority over somebody who's coming to visit for a week. Consider ways this park could be configured to support by filling needs in childcare, environmental education, athletics, This whole thing is telling these people exactly what you want for the end result. Is that what you want? You want to tell them what you want for the end result, and they'll give you exactly what you're asking them for. Prepare and present a master plan for fitting the criteria for regionally significant selection process. This whole regional designation seems to be the God that you're working toward. It is the item that you want. You want regional designation. You don't really care what anybody else says or where this goes. That is your piece. That's what you want. And everything that's being done seems to be pushing us in that direction. HKG gave you a set of information, and they gave you what you needed to have, what you asked for, because you told them what you wanted in the end. Where is the community, the public's input? This is a 10-year-old plan. Where is our input to say maybe this was not what we need right now?
Arvis, I'll give you another minute.
Thank you. Things change. Finally, let's take a look at the three options that you've been presented with. All of them go towards regional designation. How about looking at option number 4, which is to leave it as it is? Remember the aesthetic preservation that someone addressed a long time ago? How about option number 5, which says do the same thing as Two Harbors did? They connected with a nature conservancy to permanently protect a very large piece of property. Have we exhausted all possibilities? Probably not. But could we at least be sure of what we do next before we have done something that we cannot undo? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board that they need to read?
Madam Chair, I have a comment to read, and would you like me to wait till after our next speaker here?
Morning. My name is Ron Wizakowski. I'm from Hoagland. I just found out about this project a few weeks ago, and I was just have a few short comments. And one of them is that piece of land has probably not changed since the glaciers melted, and I was wondering why now. And I was also wondering what would happen if we don't do anything? I mean, we don't have to do anything. Isn't that correct? And some of the proposals that I've seen are just, I mean, they're going to cost money for sure, and the taxpayers are going to get stuck again. But a few simple paths through that area would be sufficient, I think, for people around here. Arvis mentioned the area's beauty, the natural beauty, and I think that's why people come here. We don't need any more. We don't need any more attractions. The attraction is this area. So that's really about all I had to say. It's just a few comments. So
Thank you.
I'm hoping you'll think about that.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a piece to read that comes from the Secretary-Treasurer of the Voyager Point Homeowners Association at 110 Voyagers Point. It's the desire of Voyagers Point Homeowners Association to maintain the status quo and continue the Voyagers Point Subordinate Governmental Service District. To clarify our position for the record, Voyager Point Road is a public road, not a private one. County roads exist that show Voyagers Point Road was accepted by the county in 1960 and dedicated to public use, but the property owners have always paid for road maintenance. The formation of the SGSD was a compromise between the county and property owners to ensure the road was properly maintained and all homeowners contributed to its maintenance. The HOA or POA system is not a good alternative. The Voyager Point Homeowners Association Subordinate Governmental Service District was initiated by efforts of its property owners to attain road equity by requiring all properties that benefit from a maintained road to pay for it. Eliminating our SGSD would place a disproportionate financial burden on those property owners who would pay voluntarily. Voyager Point Homeowners Association is recognized by the state of Minnesota as an assumed name only, not a legal entity or HOA with the authority to enforce payment from neighbors for road maintenance. To become an HOA, the consent of all owners and their mortgagors would be required. Many Voyager Point owners are not in favor of creating one. SGSDs pay the county for services provided. Pursuant to the statute and existing county policy, all charges for services expended by the 3 county departments and the cost to those departments should be cost neutral, as they are reimbursed by the homeowners. The county receives an administrative fee to manage contracts. Subordinate governmental service districts also create funded employment opportunities for the county. Dissolving SGSDs will decrease the tax base for all. The proposal fails to provide the board and the public with perspective on the financial consequences for the county as its taxpayers if the SGSDs are dissolved. Termination of these will depress property values in areas served. The results in an upward redistribution of the county budget and other taxing districts' levies, including the hospital and school district, across all taxpayers. The Voyagers Point Homeowners Association is in compliance with county SGSD requirements. We feel we have been a model example of how to properly partner with the county for road maintenance. We've complied with the county's requirements since our SGSD was formed and accepted by the county in 1992. Specifically, Voyager Point Homeowners Association has maintained one point of contact for communication of road-related issues and has always paid our tax levy for road maintenance costs. The Voyager Point Homeowners Association and the county mutually understand the boundaries of our road, and the scope of work is clear. The relationship between the levy, county administration, and good contractors has resulted in high-quality, well-maintained, safe roads for the community as a whole. Rather than dissolve, improve. We find nothing in the proposal to indicate compliance with the Committee of the Whole's directive at the August meeting to consider internal process improvements to reduce unnecessary time demands of this program on staff. We are willing to work with the county to make whatever changes are necessary to the SGSD policy to make it more efficacious for the county to successfully manage these ongoing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Administrator Trevor?
Thank you. I have 2 letters to read. And the first one is from the Northwoods Child Care, from the owner of the Northwoods Child Care. It says, Dear Cook County Board of Commissioners, as you make the final decision for the wage enhancement support for Cook County child care providers, I'd like for you all to take a moment to listen to what we have to say regarding the situation, how it may affect our businesses and child care providers in Cook County. Child care wage enhancements are essential to keeping my doors open and continuing to serve the families who rely on me. These enhancements allow for me to pay myself a livable wage without breaking the bank of the families in my care. I am the backbone of my program, and I provide the safe, stable, nurturing care our community depends on. Without competitive wages, I simply cannot keep my doors open because I will not be able to pay myself a wage that will be suitable for my own family. When wage enhancements disappear, programs face closures, reduced classroom availability, longer wait lists, and disruptions that directly affect working families. But when they remain in place, programs are able to maintain stable staffing, meet licensing requirements, and offer consistent, high-quality care that supports children's development and allows parents to stay in the workforce. Keeping these wage enhancements is not just about supporting child care providers. It is about protecting the stability and well-being of our entire community. Without them, many programs like mine will struggle to stay open. With them, we continue doing what we do best, caring for children, supporting families, and strengthening our community every day. Thank you, Hunter McLaurin, the owner-operator at Northwoods Child Care. And I have a second letter, and this is it's regarding child care, the child care enhancement program as well, and it's from 10 different child care providers in the county. And it says, Dear Cook County Board of Commissioners, as you approach making the final determinations as you set the FY 2026 levy, we want to take a moment to remind you of the benefits you have provided to child care in Cook County thanks to your wage enhancement program that was initiated back in 2023. You have helped build strong foundations for local child care providers. It's no secret that local daycares are in a predicament with low enrollment of preschoolers since the addition of the 3-year-old preschool program at ISD 166. Preschoolers make up over half of the enrollment in our daycares. Students who would have attended our child care now attend preschool at a sliding fee rate, a rate that we cannot compete with. Since this addition to our community, we are left with caring for a smaller age group of children when there is a high demand for infant care, but not enough spots to fill that demand, all while still leaving our rosters half empty. As you can imagine, with only half a roster, it makes it very challenging to pay staff, pay bills, and make a living. We feel it's very critical for the community and commissioners to understand the hard work and the tremendous skill that goes into childcare and the important piece childcare plays in keeping our community functioning. Even with the generosity of wage enhancement as an extra bonus, it has been a struggle to keep people in this profession. Cooperation Station has experienced several closures and near closures throughout its existence as just one example of these struggles. The wage enhancement has made a huge difference to all the daycares in Cook County. The wage enhancement has been proof of your commitment to addressing the child care crisis. We hope you continue to see the significance of wage enhancement, the significance wage enhancement has made to all of us, but know this is only one small step in addressing the child care crisis in our county. A community that values child care is also a community that will keep young families in the area and continue to draw young families to the area. What is more important than giving our youngest members of the community a place where they are safe and can thrive? It speaks volumes that Cook County is willing to invest in child care. We hope you continue to see the value in child care, and we encourage you to meet and visit with child care providers to really get an understanding of the struggles of this industry. Attached, we have provided for you a reference on how our rosters are built so that you can see where the gaps in child care are. And all of the commissioners have that chart in front of them. And on that chart, it states that license sizes are mandated by the state of Minnesota. Any changes to the roster size must be pre-approved by the county licensor. Most in-home childcares in Cook County are operating at a C1 license, and it's at the discretion of the provider if they want to accept infants in their program. A provider can opt out of taking infants and only take toddlers and up, if that's what they're comfortable with doing. So this was submitted to us by the Cooperation Station Director, the Cooperation Station Board members, and the Y Director, as well as Northwoods Child Care and Step Up Child Care.
Thank you for your comments. I want the public to understand that when they request comment to be read, that we acknowledge that to have time. Okay, so we're going to, no. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, there was a latecomer for public comment, but she got here in time. Did she speak?
We've had public comment. We've had public comment. We're done. Moving on to claims. We have, in our claims, we have the emergency management performance chart.
Administrator, wrong way. I believe that since we have a community person who is here when we just finished reading from those that could not attend, and we say that we want to hear from our community, we want transparency, and we value what people have to say, because we have a person who slid in during the reading, I think it's inappropriate for us to not allow that person. That's my opinion. I'm not the board chair.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have public comment at 8:30. I will go ahead and let you speak for 5 minutes. 8:30, we have our public comment, Ray. You know Ray.
So,
We have
pardon?
public comment at 8:30.
Pardon me?
Our public comment is at 8:30, okay? I'll let you go ahead and speak for 5 minutes.
I thought there would be more people speaking this morning and hurried as soon as I could. I'm sorry that I was not here at 8:30. I'm Ray People from Lutzen. And just am hoping that no levy will be set before Brady is able to offer what can be offset from the reserve fund in order to lower that over 7% levy. And because Sawtooth Mountain, certainly would involve the residents who live there, were they notified that this will be on the agenda today? We've had them speak out in the past, apparently. It's unfortunate that they're not here. I'm wondering about this Sawtooth Mountain development. We have Pinquish Mountain, our mountain bike trails. We have our beautiful Gitchigami trails. When we are spending so much money in our county, I would sure urge that before any decision is made, and what about a survey that is 10 years old? Is that a current survey? What about the HRA survey that when it was understood it's 10 years old, it's too old? We need another survey. 10 years, there's an awful lot that has happened here. And certainly one of those things is the cost keeps going up, up, up for our people. So please, before any decision is made, I would sure urge you, be in communication with those Sawtooth Mountain residents and think about, for whom is this being planned? Is this for local taxpayers who are picking up the bill? So, thank you, Jenny, very much for allowing
Please
me to speak.
Step over
And
and
I'll
please
sign
sign in for our public record.
You bet.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, I'll start over with the consent agenda items. We have claims, emergency management performance grant, approve the hire of Erin Schettler as engineering technician 1, approve extension of out-of-class appointment for Plamen Dimitrov, resignation of Neil Pederson, reappointment of Nina McCune to the Cook County Extension Committee. And that concludes the agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything? Commissioner White?
EMS, I would just have a more fuller conversation about it for the public at some point.
Okay, so we will pull B and put it, we can put it right now since Mike is here.
Thank you.
Commissioner White has some questions for you. Thank you, Mike.
Good morning, board members, community members. The Emergency Management Performance Grant has been around for quite a number of years. It unfortunately, like a lot of other grants, is dwindling. I looked back in records back in, let's say 20 years ago, it was over $30,000. It's now down to, as you can see from your paperwork, down to $13,011. And I already have 2025s that's very similar. I think it's $13,022. That grant is a federal grant that comes through the state that is divided up among the 87 counties, the tribes and the cities of the first class. It's based on population. So with our population, that's why our number is so very low. It also comes with grant duties. I'm required to attend 4 HSEM Homeland Security and Emergency Management quarterly meetings in person, 1 HSEM conference. I have to keep my emergency operations plan updated and reviewed by you on a 4-year basis and others on the other 3 years. I will say, just for your information, by attending those meetings and travel, even though it's not our money, it's grant money, that cuts almost a quarter of that grant. There's also grant reporting. I would say if I was to remain here for another 3 or 4 years and it got under $10,000, I would ask my supervisor to say this is not worth this small amount of money at some point. Right now, it's still doable, but any questions about the grant?
Commissioner White?
So what I'm hearing as or surmising is that the value of meeting with others quarterly is beneficial enough to support taking these grant dollars and doing the work.
Yes, oh, for sure. And the conference itself, I mean, even for a seasoned emergency manager, the conference still brings something back to Cook County that I can use for our community members to keep us prepared for emergencies. So the answer to your question is very much yes, yeah.
And could you give us an example of some idea that came back with you or something that you were able to share and implement?
Sure, like we associated with HSEM is also the Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers, of which I'm a board member on that association. I represent Region 2. We have a board meeting this week, as a matter of fact. So between HSEM trainings that bring to me, that I bring to you, AMEM also put together an elected officials handbook that we are hoping this month to have updated, that I will get all of you in front of me. So you will have fresher information as to your role during a local disaster emergency. Furthermore, with that, HSEM also offers in-person training for Board of Commissioner members, for elected officials is the technical term. And they are willing to come up here and bring training. That training, however, is a full 8-hour day. It is broken down into modules, so we could have them up here and do the first 4 one morning or afternoon, wait a few months and have them come back up if that's something that you all would be interested in.
Okay, now I have a follow-up question,
Sure.
which you are on a roll, but what does HSCM mean?
HSEM is Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Thank you.
And this EMPG, this Emergency Management Performance Grant money, is federal money, as I say, and a lot of that money, basically what HSEM does is they get that money from the federal government, they keep half of it to run some of their operations, and the other, well, it's not really 50-50, I think it's about 60-40 now. That's why it's lessening. And then the rest is distributed to the other counties, tribes, and cities. So,
Thanks.
yeah,
And I would be interested in an 8-hour training.
okay. We can talk that through.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the overview on that. Touching on all important points, I think that both public and elected commissioners should be mindful of. We have suggested it'd be valuable for us as commissioners to take a look at the committees that we sit on and the benefit of those committees. There are funding mechanisms that are available to staff and departments that help with the operations, and in some case, what's asked of us, that evaluation of is the funding justified relative to the investment of time and energy, and an honest assessment of that is important as it addresses stewardship responsibility with different departments and we as commissioners. So in some cases, we apply ourselves to things that there is no funding. It is reliant totally on levy dollars, meaning taxpayers are paying for commissioners or departments to participate in these, and the evidence of the value on the return of that investment is hugely important. And given your overview, your awareness of that, you address that, which I appreciate. Sometimes we just get into the rhythm of things and we don't do that evaluation. And I think it's commendable when we take a look at things from the standpoint of what is the value. And in some cases, there are dollars that are held up to us that those dollars shouldn't be what drives decisions. It should be the value to our community and the investment of our time based upon an assessment of priorities. So I appreciate you noting that in your overview of this.
For sure.
Commissioner White?
And one more thing, there's often the question, well, what do we need an emergency manager for? Like, you know, got a house fire, leave, something like that. But having participated in and like the crossing borders, which we did with Canada a month or so ago when the weather was warmer. And then the different, there's even national that, I'm sure I'm not compensated for this, but just to know more about the network of emergency management. The last one I listened to, the discussion was about, there was a mock drill about a nuclear emergency. Like, honestly, I never thought about a nuclear emergency. I thought about not being able to get out because there's too much snow. But so the value of the emergency program, I believe we don't understand because it runs smoothly, and there are emergencies. We're all set when there's an emergency and for emergencies, we don't even consider, so. And so I agree with you, Commissioner Gamble. I, as a commissioner, should not be paid for participating in these things, and I do not expect to do that. I attend some of these things or go online and listen because I want to feel I need to know more to do a better job. That's all.
Okay, Mike?
Commissioner White is speaking of a exercise that the state of Michigan did with our Canadian partners. It took 2.5 years to plan it, and it was a 7-day exercise that involved over 1,200 people. Just one last thing. By state statute and Chapter 12, every county in the state of Minnesota is required to have an emergency manager.
Thank you. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Item number 4 is Land Services, the Parks and Trails Commission. So we'll have a review of all that from Mitch Travis. Morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam,
Reviewing all of that feels kind of like a lot, but I'll do my best. So as you all are aware, kind of in our committee of the whole meeting that we held back in October now, I believe, I kind of highlighted the history of Sawtooth Bluffs and all the things that have been related to it. Kind of what it boils down to is in 2016, the commissioners of Cook County adopted the Cook County Comprehensive Trails Plan. This included Sawtooth Bluffs as a primary trail hub within that plan. Subsequently, they appointed the Parks and Trails Commission, as well as hired the Parks and Trails Coordinator back in 2016. After a couple of years of planning in 2018, they formed the Sawtooth Bluffs Master Plan. This was a collaborative effort between Cook County and Grand Marais, so it's important to remember that the county as a whole cannot decide what the entirety of that bluff looks like at the end of the day. We can only look at our portion of the property, and so this has to be a collaborative effort between Grand Marais and Cook County if we want to preserve the hillside. So at the end of the day, in the fall of 2018, the Sawtooth Bluffs plan was adopted by the Board of Commissioners here with Cook County, as well as the city of Grand Marais. So that's the plan we're operating off of. That's the plan we're tasked with implementing as the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission. And then in 2025, this board put Sawtooth Bluffs planning as a budget item. So that's kind of been our main charge this year, is to find a way to do what we were tasked with doing at the beginning of the year. Again, I just want to highlight this RFP doesn't commit us to anything. It's just allowing us to proceed with engaging with some planning firms. That does include a lot of public engagement. This board can suggest ways for us to engage with the public if they would like. And then at any point in the project, we have the opportunity as a board and a community to evaluate various components of the project for whether or not they fit within the scope of the plan. And as Ray said, we do understand that we need more information. We need to do more surveys, and this is kind of what we're asking you to do, is allow us to proceed with engaging with a landscape architecture firm to assist us in planning with what we want to do here, so that we have more information that we can then bring forth to the public and seek more input on it, give them a more informed decision. So with that, I think I'd just kind of pause and wait to hear you guys. Go ahead.
I just would like to really quickly touch on a couple things. The whole thing about doing nothing is not actually doing nothing. The plan is in existence. The plan has been adopted. So if you do nothing, you actually leave it open. The charge for the plan is to promote. The board has already decided that is what the plan is. So if somebody, a user group, comes to the board with that, there is a document that is adopted by the board that says, yes, this is the plan. We have adopted this. So doing nothing is not actually doing nothing. It is keeping the door open for those things that are identified in the plan to keep on going, which is why we wanted to further that public discussion by doing this public process through the RFP. And just a really quick touch on that whole thing, who's it for? Frankly, a lot of things, like if you get the Ridge Riders Snowmobile Club, they have put in for grants for maintenance for trails, for their snowmobile trails and stuff like that, but they don't keep it closed to just their user group. They are a local user group, but it is open for everybody to use it. So the way that those things work is that the local groups will go ahead and petition for grants and things, which is part of the reasons for the designation, regional designation, is to get further funding for these user groups to be able to do that. The local groups generally get the grants. We act as fiscal agents for those grants, but they're not restricted to public use. And so that just kind of answers that question. Yes, they are basically, by and large, local, but they are available, as in Pitt and Cushion or everything else, open to everybody else to be able to use. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Administrator Trevor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both, Tim and Mitch, and for the community that provided feedback as well. I just wanted to mention that we have had a number of discussions around this, and as staff and as the administrator, we chose to bring this forward today with different options because we heard feedback about the RFP. And so obviously moving forward with the RFP is still an option, as is moving forward with HGK. Or HKG, I'm sorry. And then we also added an option, which is basically the board advise us on the next steps, because as Tim and Mitch have mentioned, the plan was adopted in 2018, and so we are moving forward as directed by the board, given the decisions that have been made. So we are certainly open to ensuring that more information is collected from the community as we move forward. As Mitch mentioned, the RFP was modified to include and make sure that we have the opportunity for surveys and community engagement. But we're really looking for advice on and a direction from the board on what we should do as we move forward.
Comments or questions? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, I'd ask a question. We've had this discussion in our budget negotiations relative to PILT funds and things that are designated for recreation. And can you remind the board and the public the amount of money that is, and this might be unfair just coming off the sleeve here, but the amount of money that is in that fund presently and moving forward, some of those monies are coming from tax forfeited properties as well that get designated for recreation?
Yes.
Is that a correct statement?
Yes. Historically, it's come from tax forfeit sales and from a portion of the state in lieu of tax, the $35,000 that you're allowed to spend for anything that the board has designated for recreation since as long as I've been here.
Right.
I'll have to look at, oh, you have it. Thank you, Ann.
Good. Thank you.
She's here. So that's the state in lieu. The total, the state in lieu is 172. That's the environmental trust. Let's see.
And my question pertains
It's-
to the issue of concerned about the board that made a decision relative to setting aside $30,000 in the 2025 budget to pursue an alliance, and a request for a proposal. And the additional monies potentially could come from that funding source. My question is that moving forward, concerned about losing that $30,000 as designated in the 2025 budget, to try to address the budget and looking at how we can trim our levy and yet not great angst and concerned about monies to be able to fund this, is looking at that fund to see the available monies that could be used. As I understand it, I mean, we're looking at roughly $50,000, $60,000 updated if we were to move forward on this request for proposal. And so I'm just saying, what do we have in there that we could be mindful of to address this issue of funding?
Yeah, we have 172,000 currently in that Parks and Rec fund. We also have other funds, as I laid out at that meeting, environmental trust funds, the interest earnings,
Sure.
and other, sources that are potential. We'd have to look. We want to use them as close to the statutory guidance as possible. But
Right.
the Parks and Rec for sure. And sometimes, depending on what it is, it could be the environmental funds, it could be some other funds. But for sure, and that's that 35,000, if you choose to keep it in that purpose, is continuous, until the state changes.
Sure. And so what we're saying is we have a funding source, and when it comes to budget and allocation of dollars, anything, as was just addressed by Mike with emergency management, if there's money that comes from grants and we use those monies related to emergency management, if there are monies that come that help public health, human services, or any other area, much of our highway comes from monies that granted state or federal for our infrastructure. And in this regard, relative to recreational things, which parks and trails, we have a funding source. If we use the funding source that is designated by statute or any other governing regulatory agency, then what we are doing in our stewardship responsibility is trying to mitigate the impact of expenditures that directly affect levy, which is taxpayer dollars. So in looking at this, the 30,000 or 30,000 that was set aside, that was a motion passed by the previous board that put in the 2025 budget, but those dollars were not from this fund. Those dollars were associated with levy. And my recommendation is that to alleviate the angst that, hey, we have this money and we don't want to lose it, I would not want the budget issue to drive a decision. I would like to be mindful of the fact we could take this from a funding source that does not impact levy and be mindful of that. The other is, and coming out of the town hall meeting that Commissioner White and you and Tim attended, we appreciated that conversation, and I think you would agree that the majority of that conversation focused on mountain bike trails. And so if we were to survey the community and ask the community what it is that we wanted in that subgroup during that town hall meeting, it was pretty evident that mountain biking is something that we would like. It would help with school and programming. It would help with our local organizations that focus on mountain biking and things. I think my whole thing in reviewing the request for proposal and reviewing the regional status, the best practices which simply means this is what we do to get where we want to go, to identify these things, that this should be public informed. And back in 2018, when it was public informed, if you take the information, and this came up in the town hall, that if we say, what would you like? The public input that came in as a result of that survey way back then, which I reviewed online, that many people said, we would like to have Frisbee golf. We'd like camping. We'd like RV. We would like an interpretive center. We'd like to build a building where people could come up and da-da-da. We'd like campsites. And with some of these things that get proposed, if we follow through, then they fall into a category where they fall under requirements that the state puts in place. So many campsites are going to need restrooms. And so we need to understand all of the components that are part of what we, choose to do. So if we say the public has spoken and this is what we want, we have all of those. Which voice is the voice that gets the priority that says we will build a building, we will build climbing wall? And I think, you'd reference it, if you'd gone in with former Commissioner Frank Moe and had looked at whether or not a climbing option was even there. These are the analysis that go into addressing the realities of what can we and can we not do. I think part of the public comment this morning and part of what was identified in the packet information that we received as board members here is that there should be a balanced or equal, addressing equal need relative to local and tourists. And I think if you look at your February 2025 Survey Monkey survey that you did, that the results of that survey indicate that when you ask the question about are you supportive of allocating local resources such as taxes or public funds to develop the regional park, full-time residents, there were 38% that said, yeah, I'm comfortable with, devoting taxes, public funds to that. 49% said no, and unsure was 13%. If you ask frequent visitors, you've got 76% of them saying, yeah, I don't have any problem with you spending local monies. And those that say no are 3%, where I don't know where they're getting their basis for that response. Understanding this issue of what does the community want, I think the people that contribute the money to it, which are the taxpayers, they have a vested interest, and certainly that's what we want to address. You highlighted and read in the packet that's included, that's available to public online and for board members, that this involvement in public, so that the public informs this direction of decision, is important. And it is underscored in multiple, from the state standpoint, from the Regional Park Committee, and I've talked to them directly, it's underscored in what do you do for a request for proposal, and the public input. The question is, where does that happen? Does that happen to determine what we want as a community that we're willing to financially back, or does it come as a commitment that now we find out what we want? To those that would say we've already asked the public, as you mentioned, this was done the 2018. Commissioner Sullivan and myself sit on the Housing Resource Board, and in our last meeting, there was on the agenda a proposal that we do a study to update our housing needs. And the comments that came from the commissioners on that board were, if our data is a decade plus old, I just think 10 years is too long for updating data. And so if we're going to be current and understand where we're at with what has transpired in 10 years, we should revisit this. My encouragement would be that we would find out for all of those that contribute monies towards this. That means people that are here locally that pay taxes, people here that have second homes or whatever they pay taxes, that these people who have a vested interest in this financially would be able to inform our decision. And I, as an elected representative, am willing to support what the community wants because I represent the community. So that's my position. As you know, Commissioner Sullivan and I sit on the Preserve the Bluff, and so we've had these two entities. One is Preserve the Bluff, keep it as it is, and the other is the Sawtooth Bluff, master plan. And trying to get the two groups together to see where we have shared values. And I think that's important, that communication needs to take place. I think we can find things that are compatible in that regard, that lends a a louder voice to this thing overall, but I think we need to explore what it is that, where we find that compatibility. So my recommendation is that we would not move forward with a request for proposal at this time, but that we would look at how we might be able to use some of these monies to hear the voice of our community and have a more refined direction, and then move forward. If we move forward at this point, we're making an assumption based on old information, and I think let's get current information, and that's why I recommended the survey, and certainly Parks and Trails, Land Service, whomever, to refine that, the nature of those questions to answer the fundamental question, what we would like to see happen with that property after a 2016, 2018 visit, to revisit that before we would move forward. That would be my recommendation. And whatever comes out of that finding, I think that would be current information that could drive the decision with the understanding that we do have a resource that is not totally tax reliant. The other thing I have found in my service to this community is that oftentimes we have funding sources like the Regional Parks and Development that begin projects, but it falls on the community to support that project. And I think any feasibility study needs to reflect that perspective that shows we can build it, but can we maintain it, and who will pay the cost to maintain it? And I know we have a number of volunteer organizations. Tim referenced Snowmobile Club, but we've got mountain biking, we've got hiking trails, but we should lock in to have an understanding and not make assumptions. And so I think rightly ordering the information to drive direction that is current would be advisable. The other thing I would say is that the regional park, their whole tension when they evaluate the applications that come in is if there's regional significance, meaning that it has value to the region, not just to the local community. That's one of the bases of the criteria that they use. So we need to understand that if we say this is what our community wants and it's solely focused on the community, the committee that reviews these applications based upon designating regional status is going to look at, is it attractive within the region? Because that's why we want these legacy dollars to do things that have broader than just the local community. Understanding all that is important, I think. So I appreciate the time for the discussion.
My question would be, what response, since we're joined with the city council, have you had from them? Have you met with them? Input from them?
I mean, all things that we've discussed have all been speculative, obviously. In speaking with, the mayor and with city administrator, they have kind of been in a holding pattern while the county is kind of determining how they're going to move forward. We have had kind of loose commitments of once you guys decide which, firm you want to engage with, we as a city council will then determine what our involvement will be. Kind of in terms of monetary involvement. In the past, in planning with Sawtooth Bluffs, it was a 50-50 collaboration, and the city spent 50%, the county spent 50%, as well as we got a portion from Lake Superior Coastal Star Grant to do the initial planning with ARDC. So I would imagine a fairly similar arrangement, but obviously I have no guarantees on that.
So whatever we set today, then they'll go ahead and basically support us with that.
Well, and
Is that what you're hearing?
they endorsed HKGI.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Did you have a comment, Commissioner Mills?
Just that.
Just that. Okay, Commissioner White?
Tim, you said we have to keep going because this is in place. We have this, I can read this. The plan is in place. It's been voted on. Can we rescind the plan? I feel like this is pushing, and I mean, this is driving the discussions. And to our attorney, can we rescind the plan? Somebody might know, undo a past board decision.
We can second guess every board decision,
I'm
but,
sure we can.
but it has to come from the side that passed it.
What would that be? I mean,
Well, it's
we go
odd,
back to
it's
the
strange
last
if it's
board?
way old, but unless I'm,
There are also time constraints on that as far as it happening at the next meeting, prior to any action being taken on it. I don't have it in front of me. I can certainly get that up.
So there's no going back and saying, we don't want to, we just, even though not all the commissioners still exist and,
I mean, I think we can. I don't know time constraints though.
If it's a motion to reconsider, that's something that has some time constraints. If you're asking for new action on something that has not had, that the board hasn't proceeded with active steps toward that yet, there may be ways to move around that. But if it's a motion for reconsideration, there are some time constraints around that.
Madam Chair?
yes.
Yeah, and Commissioner White, if I could, it is kind of like we can, the board can and does change the ordinances all the time. So that's adopted by the Board of Commissioners, it's done. But and so, yes, I do believe this board can rescind a plan that's out there. But I think they would have to go through a public hearing, and the whole point of this is to get this step is just to get that information, that public information that Commissioner Gamble is talking about. And I just have to ask the question as well, since we are actually in December now. So if we don't do it now and we put a survey out before to know if we want to actually have public input or comment through a public engagement process, is that kicking the can into 26? And then all of a sudden in 26, we come back with an RFP if the survey came back and said, oh yeah, we support this. And the board would say, oh, I'm sorry, that was 25 money. You don't get that money now. And so we don't have those funds available to us then. So just have to ask and make sure that if we do this pause and do a survey, which can be included in this RFP process as well, because like Mr. Travis said, it just doesn't commit us to anything after a full public engagement process, which would include a survey of everybody involved, and actual public meetings and such like that. Then we would come back for a decision on that process, so.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to clarify, aware of this, I think hopefully what we're trying to do in good faith is encourage a process that includes the community, that is updated and current, and that it looks at what has changed and is mindful of the commitment that has been made relative to the dollars. And that's why the previous discussion to say that we have a funding source that is available. If the line item in the budget is driving a decision, I think it's wrongly placed as far as priority. If the concern about losing monies that, oh my goodness, now we had some momentum, now it seemed like we've lost it, that's why I'm saying that funding source that is not levy dependent is a funding source that we can tap into. My question is that I think, and you can say that if we say that a request for a proposal doesn't commit us to anything, what it is doing, it is moving in a direction. And I think after 10 years, since 2018, if you look at that plan, what elements of those plans has the community said that they're willing to do? That's why in this proposed survey, it's saying, what is it you'd like to see coming out of the town hall? Definitely, mountain biking was the topic that predominated the discussion. And so I'm just saying, do we want to see the Bluff developed, and if so, what would you like to see? This is current information, that is data that's provided to us, that going for an RFP, we have given some direction to mine this out. It's also following with the recommendation that comes from the regional park status and how we move forward in defining what it is we as a community want. So that's my 2 points is current information, define what we want. We don't need to spend $50,000 to $60,000 and then find out maybe we're headed in the wrong direction. If this is what the community would like to see, and we've clearly defined what we'd like to do, we flesh that out now through this request for proposal that partners with an organization can help us on that path. And I think we need to ask a fundamental question that has updated since 2018.
Administrator Trouble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So two comments I want to make. The first one is regarding the funding, and we've already had some discussions about shifting that to the PILT funding with Brady. And so I think whether that comes out of this year's budget or next year's budget, that's not as much of an issue to me because we've already had those discussions about being able to leverage the PILT so that it's not coming out of the levy. So, and Brady, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
but-
that funding is still there, so.
Yeah. So that to me just is kind of a non-issue at this point. It seems to me that the question really is, are we comfortable collecting community data and information through a survey process in the RFP, or do we feel strongly that that should happen before the RFP is issued? Because either way, what we're saying is that we want to collect information from the community to make sure that we have feedback on what happens with the Bluff in terms of what activities and what recreational activities are allowed through that. So my question for the board is, are you comfortable getting that information through the RFP? Or do you feel that we need to pause the effort to collect that information now before we move forward with the RFP? Because we, like you mentioned, Commissioner Gamble, we did highlight that in red to make sure that people were aware that that is part of the RFP in the process.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've had this discussion for a long time, and I really feel strongly that utilizing HKG would be an opportunity for us to get information. It's a trusted organization. The City of Grand Marais is very comfortable with that. But, so what I'm going to do is make a motion that we employ HKG and utilize their existing bid to move forward, but that we pay for it through PILT money. And that we include a survey and in-person community engagement.
Support.
Any further discussion? Commissioner White?
So we would ask the consultants to find out what our community people want. And we also have it that they are drawing up, I mean, we look at this list and there's a climbing wall in there. And there was a speaker at the town hall a month or so ago in Colville, a community person, who had said, or maybe Mitch remembers, he's right behind us there, who they've actually tried, and it's not, you're not going to climb that. And so to have that on the list it shouldn't be on the list because it's not a possibility. So that would just, not liquidate, it would just, let's just do the number of options that are really possible, so climbing wall is not.
So you're saying you'd like to
I don't know.
eliminate some of the topics?
Well, just the climbing wall for sure, because it was stated that we have the wrong rock up there in Cook County.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I agree, the rock isn't right, but, I mean, who knows if the community decides they want an actual facility, you can have an indoor climbing wall, so that's something, but I don't know that that's what the community's gonna want, but, maybe they do. So what's the harm in asking, I think we should really focus on the scope here, establish and manage a planning process framework that fosters successful public involvement and endeavors to create a recreation area master plan supported by the Cook County and Grand Marais communities. So anything that's created is supposed to be supported by Cook County and Grand Marais communities. That's just A, and it goes on. B, affirm, amend, and update the plan. It's an old plan, so it needs to reflect the priorities and values of Cook County. So that would be updating it to current. So we need to gather that information and then revisit the plan, the map, revisions, additional mapping. You know, it's all just updating basically, and then determining what the community wants. And this is, I think, exactly what we should be doing. And that's why I supported Commissioner Sullivan's.
But with PELT funds.
Yeah, and that is an excellent point. That's an excellent point. I agree with that 100%.
Further comments, Commissioner Gamble?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. So there's a huge assumption that is, I mean, the history is maybe driving the assumption that this is what the community wants, so let's move forward. I think that to try to assuage some of the concern that the community isn't involved, that we're saying, well, the request for proposal, if we partner with a consultant firm, that certainly community involvement will be there. We'll pay $50,000 to $60,000, even though it's coming from PILT fund. Those funds could be used in anything that's recreational. In fact, those funds could be used for a survey of all taxpayers which have vested interests that define what it is we want. So going into a relationship with a consultant, we say, this is what the community has said, as opposed to entrusting all that responsibility to them to do it. In response to your question, my recommendation is a pause so that we put first things first relative to moving forward with an expenditure of significant dollars. That's just saying, if the public wants this, then let's move forward and let's use those funds and then let's hire somebody. I think that looking at competitive bids is part of fiscal responsibility. If the city says, well, we like them, we use them, so you use them, take that as part of the information. But if we're going to put a request for proposal out there, let's find out and let's evaluate.
Oh, well, it was half the price that the city paid. You know, because the city used them, they have the background. They have the background,
Sure.
like data. And so
Yeah.
that's a huge advantage for this firm.
I
And
would-
that's, I think, fiscally responsible, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to double the cost. And
I would agree if, in fact, that is true.
It
Yeah.
is,
Well,
Yeah,
have we put out a request for proposal other than just asking them?
We haven't issued a request for proposal, that's what we're
Because
asking for.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but your basis, when you had them come in with something, you requested something of them,
Yep,
but we did not request from anybody else.
No, I mean, this was, when we engaged with HKGI, it was after discussing this with city administrator.
Yeah.
You know, they suggested that we have something kind of concrete to propose to them, is like, hey, here's what it might cost us to get across the finish line with the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails
Yeah.
regional designation
Yeah.
process.
And if I can clarify, I think what's being stated is that because they're familiar with Grand Marais, the amount of work that they would have to do just to understand the dynamics of the location is less. And so their bid was less due to not having to do that background work because they're already familiar with the location.
I would agree. I would agree with that. It makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I think too, just to speak a little bit further on that is, you know, yes, they have familiarity with the area. Two, they were successful in achieving regional designation with the rec park with the city. So, I mean, a couple of feathers in their hat. And two, just to speak to the timeline issue, yes, you know, part of our urgency was in regards to the $30,000 budgeted in 2025. But I think it's also important to recognize that Greater Minnesota is not going to sit there forever and wait for us to make a decision on this. Is they have informed me that they are considering all these projects that have been sitting on their docket for, you know, upwards of 8 years, and what do they want to do with them? And they have, I mean, in no uncertain terms, informed me that they would like to see us, you know, proceeding and engaging with a firm, because, I mean, in their experience in dealing with all of Greater Minnesota, Joe Chapowski, who's the coordinator for Greater Minnesota, informed me that he's not seen a grassroots effort in kind of getting some of these older projects up and running again. And it would be a good indicator to them that, hey, we are in good faith proceeding by hiring a firm and proceeding with planning. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that Greater Parks and Trails, since the legacy funding has been put in place, anybody that puts in a credible application will be considered. And so my point is that if we did not move forward right now with the sense that we're going to lose our opportunity exists as long as that funding source exists, as long as we have a credible application. And in my discussions with them, it's not an issue that we lose our opportunity because you only get to come before them once. You can come any time that you have a credible application that is submitted. And my whole point is that to revisit this with more clarity and focus before we would engage somebody to do the work that we should do on the front end with information that should be updated. That's my whole premise.
So the survey, doing it locally before, often the question is asked, you're hiring another consultant, can't you do the work? So here's my question. If, who on staff, would it be Travis, Mitch Travis, who would be creating the survey and then bulk mailing and doing all of that, and being paid for with PILT funding to do that? I don't, who locally would put all of that together to find out what our local people, taxpayers, or even non-local taxpayers, who would actually be doing the work to put that together?
So I can speak to that, and that would be staff. So we would have to determine if who has capacity. Mitch would certainly be a part of it, but he also works part-time for the Parks and Trails. So we would just have to determine what that would look like. We haven't had those discussions because our hope was that that work would happen as part of the work with the consultants through the RFP or through this firm that we've been discussing, HKG. But it would certainly be staff.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the survey, the nature of the questions that are asked, understanding what it is we want to know moving forward, that can be compiled and drafted internally. There are organizations, if you look at what the referendum for the school, that mailing that went out, if we actually just duplicated that is asking the public, what do you want? And so it's not something that is not been done before, not something that I've managed surveys in the past. I've worked with credible survey organizations throughout the country in my previous positions, and so this is not something that is daunting. It's just a matter of what is the vehicle that you want to use, what are the questions you want to ask, and how will the information inform you in moving forward. And so we have lists that would be available. Obviously, the school, when it did what it did, they use a list that identifies all of those that have the right to be able to lend their voice to the decision. So that if we were to pause it, that would be my recommendation, is that Parks and Trails and the board and whomever else would define the nature of the questions we want to ask before we move forward. And if the community says this is what we'd like to see as a broad statement moving forward, the question is, do we want to preserve the aesthetic, or do we want to see the development? That is a basic fundamental question, which two organizations are working at right now with Preserve the Bluff and then Sawtooth Bluff Development. I think as a community, the word community itself implies that we come together and try to understand where we find the common ground so that we can do something that protects the interests of our community as a whole. We should update that, ask that information now, and there's a means of being able to do that and to fund it through the parks and through the money that comes from PILT.
Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make certain that we're clear that just because we are looking at a potential development, that it does not mean we're going to ruin the aesthetics. If you think about Pincushion, there's trails all over, and it does not damage the view shed at all. And so I just want to make sure that we're really clear on that when we're talking about walking paths, biking paths. That is not something that would damage the view shed.
We have a motion and a second. The motion is that we hire HKG with the money coming from an extra fund that we have in PILT. So, before I ask for a vote, does anybody else have any comments? Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair, I appreciate it. And to Commissioner Sullivan's point, I understand that relative to how do we find that compatibility with the aesthetic, and certainly, you know, the mountain biking issue and the hiking trails. But if you look at the plan, and the plan, you know, that is before us is a plan that includes potential for buildings, for campsites, which means lights. So the resolution from the city to supporting dark skies, and people that support the plan through their lens don't want to see these things. All of those things, if we developed everything that was identified in that plan, there would be some people that would be disillusioned by it. So my point is, yes, I agree. There are things that we can do to protect both sides, but we should let the community inform that, because right now, what we've been informed, there's conflict with all of those things that are in the present plan. And if we go with whomever as a consultant, say, here's our plan.
Update it.
Huh?
Update it. Here's our plan. Please update it with community input.
Yeah, and this is why I'm saying, let's know what the community wants before we spend $60,000, no matter where it comes from. That's my recommendation, so.
And to Commissioner Sullivan, the one difference with Pincushion is, has a lovely, huge parking lot. And the road is there to get people to that parking lot, and we don't have that. That's not existing, it's not existing there. So to have more people accessing that area will impact those residents, will impact the road, the aesthetics from where, if you don't live right there, it'll be fine, but if you live there.
Well, the plan is the road below, not up top.
Yeah.
So people will be walking up.
There was a plan to build an access area kind of starting below kind of where the dog park is, creating a parking area there. Yep.
But it's all speculative.
Right.
Like
Right.
this
Right.
is not
So-
concrete. So we can
Okay, I'm going
figure.
to call for a vote. We have motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes with 2 ayes and 2 nays. Thank you very much. And as you can see, we have a lot of opinions, so I'm really hoping that we'll be consulted also in terms of how we see the vision too. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You're welcome. 3. Okey-doke. Item 5 is, I'll turn that over to our attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to recommend consent to the appointment of special county attorney for the limited purposes of review and potential prosecution related to.
Could you please speak up into the microphone? 'Cause
Sure.
when I go to listen to this, I'll never hear.
Is that better?
It's better here.
Okay, great. So this is a referral from law enforcement to an outside agency for investigation, which is something that is done when there is a potential conflict. And then similarly, we are referring out for prosecutorial decision because of the same conflict, so.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to appoint, or consent to appoint the special county attorney for limited purpose of review and potential prosecution related to ICR CO 250000568.
I'll support.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have updates from the administrator, Tribble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first update I have is just a reminder that we have the Truth and Taxation this evening at 6 p.m. in this room, so just a reminder for the community. The second update is we are conducting our second round of PHHS director interviews this week, so I know that, we have been keeping the community informed and the board informed on what's happening with that position, so just wanted folks to know that we do have our second round this week. Megan? Second round of second round. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Yes, we did not make a hiring decision during the first round, and so we reposted the position, and we had our first round of interviews for that second round, and now we have our second round. So thank you for that clarification. The last update is I wanted to make sure the community is aware that the work on the parking lot at the LEC that we had previously communicated out regarding has been delayed due to the weather. So we are planning on issuing a press release later today, and we'll make sure that the community is aware of that. But for those listening and for our commissioners, just wanted to make sure you were aware that that is as delayed and probably not a surprise to anyone, given the recent weather. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Commissioner Report, meeting updates. Does anyone have anything to share?
It just was in Duluth yesterday for the annual CHB meeting, and those meetings are typically not as much information, like the blurb from the doctor, and more just a celebration of the accomplishments from the past year, recognizing staff, and I know it's just a good experience. Of course, there's a lot of tough financial situations with federal grants, but so far things are looking good through 2026 with the 2026 budget. Also attended virtually, just briefly, the Energy Transition Advisory Council. That's down in, I believe it's Sherburne County. Most of it was virtual, and just trying to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on with those federal grants and the other communities that have gone through the energy transitions, and this is related to Taconite Harbor, and that's why we're a part of that. So, but nothing. I didn't have anything to report further from that at this point.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will just give a brief update. At ARDC, they have their senior link, and because of the Medicaid situation, they are overwhelmed with phone calls, and we did ask for some dollar support from the state because they're leaving after 8 hours, and there's still many people online asking questions, so they're doing as best the job as they can to hire a few more people to cover more phone calls. This time of year, it will settle down, but this time of year is really a strain on everybody there. Anything else?
Well, and just in response to I didn't think of it before, but the emergency management training regarding nuclear, now through the General Government Committee, of course, there's a lot of talk about the nuclear and why the moratorium is put in place, and so when you first mentioned it at a previous meeting, I was thinking like nuclear war, but which would also be an emergency, but it maybe is hopefully none of it, but I could see why that might be a relevant topic now with more discussions about nuclear facilities, which I'm learning more about, and so far I haven't seen any. They talk about technological improvements with the waste, and so far I haven't seen any successful projects in the United States along that. I know in Europe they have some that are using different grades of nuclear, and then of course the Navy's been doing it for 75 years, but I think that's just 75-year technology still, just in a different scale. So still learning lots about that, and we'll have another General Government Committee meeting on Wednesday.
Okay, Commissioner Sullivan?
On that same note, the Natural Resources and Environment Committee for AMC is also looking at this issue of nuclear, and we'll be discussing it at our annual meeting, which is coming up next week. I did have an opportunity to watch a program on television over the Thanksgiving holiday about nuclear energy being created in Europe. And it was a really well-done piece, and it focused on Scandinavian countries. Denmark was highlighted as well, and technology has really changed. So I'm sure that we will learn more next week on our policy committees.
Where was it?
It was a PBS special.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Commissioner
I just have a question for Commissioner Gamble or Sullivan. The Save the Bluff, I think I heard at the town hall meeting that they have succeeded in acquiring the necessary funding to purchase that parcel. Is that true? And if so, when does that move forward and become a big celebration?
There are things in the works, and there has not been a final signed purchase agreement, but things are in the works.
And the seller is still holding and waiting?
Correct.
Because we've passed the deadline.
Correct. I actually inquired with the December 1st date kind of looming, and everything is good. So the Preserve the Bluff is working with Mr. Sheaf.
And that for the public, because there were a lot of people that have asked about that because of their presentations at the Committee of the Whole, how they were doing.
Right. And I am certain they will have some kind of public communication, but it's not within our charge to provide that communication.
Commissioner Gamble?
I would add that where the process is at is that they've had donators which are willing to contribute the funds. The fund have been raised. The question is, and we've talked about this many times through this course of pursuing how we might be able to purchase this property, not-for-profit status. Given the timeline, applying for not-for-profit status was an issue. But given all of the things that we've looked at and the opportunities we've had for grant monies and just general public, asking for donations, that the money has been raised. They are applying for not-for-profit status. Attorneys are involved so that it's moving forward. I've had a conversation with Mr. Sheaf, and so in good faith, the intent is that the donors will be able to get the benefit of making the donation to make the purchase, and that as long as the intent is there and that the attorneys are working on it, it is projected that this will all happen and that the not-for-profit status will exist so that donors will get that benefit. And the property then would be purchased and then donated to the county with the idea that there would be some stipulation as to non-development and that there might be some requirement to working with the conservation to keep it undeveloped. So, but the fact that the attorneys are involved at this point, it's sort of running on automatic pilot. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all the updates. The upcoming meetings, we do have this evening at 6 o'clock, Truth and Taxation. Auditor Powers has presented a great PowerPoint for us to go over, and we will be recorded so that those folks who aren't able to be here can still participate and see our meeting. Then starting on Sunday, we're going to be down at the AMC conference in Bloomington for those of us who are able to go. And just an update on our regular board commission meeting, which I think probably will be our last one, which is Tuesday, December 16th. The time is different. We start at 10:30 on that. And then this must be just kind of a repeat of all the different committees, but we have Budget and Facility on Tuesday, December 23rd. I don't think we probably want to participate since we've already set our levy by then, and anyway, that just popped out at me. Recognition of December staff anniversaries. Leah Leonard from Public Health and Human Services, 2 years. Mark Buckman, Law Enforcement Center, 3 years. Neva Maxwell, Land Services, 4 years. Diana Lundquist, Land Services, 12 years. Lisa Sorley, Highway Department, 17 years. Ben Halberg, Law Enforcement Center, 21 years. And Lindsay Milkey, Law Enforcement Center, 21 years. And being no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.